y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So as you can tell by the title of today's video, we are going to discuss all of the books that I read for the month of February. And I'm not even going to hold y'all, it wasn't a lot because I flopped so hard. I don't know what the hell happened, but February was just not the best month for me in terms of reading. I feel like I didn't really start reading until maybe the second or third week of February. And we all know that February is the shortest month out of the year, so I don't know what that was about, but I just was not in the mood to pick up a book. I don't know, y'all. So a lot of the books that I said I was going to read in February, that just didn't happen. But of course, the reads that I didn't get to in the month of February will be sprinkled throughout the rest of my monthly TBRs throughout the year. I feel like the books that I did read this month were incredible. I have 2 5-star reads that are definitely going to go in my favorite books of 2023 video at the end of the year. I'm already calling it now. These 2 books in particular, I already know are going to be in that video. And I just love when I can find books like that so early on because it just makes things better. It just makes life a little bit more colorful. So I really love the fact that I was able to, like I said, find 2 new favorite books this month. Even though I wasn't able to read as many books, I am still really happy with the books that I did read. And I'm also going to include 2 books that I read for the month of January that I completely forgot to talk about in my January wrap up. So those 2 books will be included in this video. As you guys know, I always start off with the lowest rated books of the month and then work my way up to the highest rated books. But I'm actually going to start out with an unrated book because this is a book that I just could not give a rating to in good faith. And that's because it's a children's book. The book that I have here is Beyonce by Leila Mottley. I think that's how you pronounce their name. But this is a children's book, as you can see, and I don't regret buying this, nor do I regret reading this. I'm not really one to read children's books. Now, I do own the complete box set of the Junie B. Jones series because those were the books that got me into reading. So I have those on my shelves for sentimental value. So this is a book that pretty much just speaks to Beyonce's rise to stardom and how she became the woman that she became. And you guys know, if you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that I'm a huge Beyonce stan. Beehive Until I Die, and I just had to pick up this book because I actually saw this account on Bookstagram. I think it's called Always Black. I will leave their handle link down below because they're a phenomenal account, and I think that they are a division of Penguin Random House. They pretty much just promote and talk about Black literature, and this is one book that they shared. When I saw this on their feed, I just had to snatch it up because I just thought it was the cutest thing, and it was. It's really short, obviously, and it is all in illustrations, as you can see here, but I just thought that this was the cutest little book when they have 4 members, and then of course with the 3 members with Kelly and Michelle and Beyonce. That is so cute. Come on y'all, come on. Do you see this? So cute. B and J right here, I can't handle it. So if you are a fan of Beyonce, then I definitely recommend picking this book up. Even if you don't read it, I just think that this is still a cute collector's item to have if you are a fan of hers. But I'm really happy that I read this in the month of February because not only did it tie in with Black History Month, but it directly spoke to me and my taste. So yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the lowest rated book of the month. And the lowest rated book that I have here that is sitting at a 3.5 star is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. So I feel like this is going to be a very loaded review and recap. While I didn't 100% enjoy this story, there were still elements about it that I did like, and after I joined a specific book club discussion, I understood a lot more why people really resonated with this story and why it became a fan favorite for so many. So I am going to just read the synopsis to you guys because it's just easier that way for me right now when it comes to this book in particular, because I feel like there is a lot going on, but we're just gonna read the synopsis. Bradley Graham is pretty much perfect. He's a star football player, manages his OCD well enough, and comes out on top in all his classes, except the ones he shares with his ex-best friend, Celine. Celine Van Gora is conspiracy theory obsessed. Social media followers eat up her takes on everything from UFOs to holiday overconsumption, yet she's still not cool enough for the popular kids table, which is why Brad abandoned her for the in crowd years ago. At least that's how Celine sees it. These days, there's nothing between them other than petty insults and academic rivalry. So, when Celine signs up for a survival course in the woods, she's surprised to find Brad right beside her. Forced to work as a team for the chance to win a grand prize, these 2 teens must trudge through not just mud and dirt, but their messy past. And as this adventure brings them closer together, they begin to remember the good bits of their history. But has too much time passed? Or just enough to spark a whole new kind of relationship? That synopsis is still cute, I still love that, and Talia Hibbert is still my girl, okay? And I feel like 3.5 is not even that low, but I do have to speak my truth, and I have to give y'all my thoughts and like why I just didn't love this book as much as everyone else did. Now the cover, 8. Like nobody can dispute the cover. To be honest, I want to buy this book physically just for the cover. I'm so serious. Like, it wasn't even my favorite book that I read by Talia Hibbert, but like I low-key want it just for the cover. So we will see how that goes. But getting into the things that I did enjoy about the story before I get into the things that I didn't necessarily care for, I really loved the banter between Celine and Brad. I just thought that these two were so hilarious, and I loved how snarky they were. And I also love the fact that they were able to keep up with each other. That's one thing that I really look for in my romance books in particular, especially if there is some angst or if it is an enemies to lovers type of trope. I need both of them to be able to verbally spar with one another and keep up with the other, because that's what makes it more fun. And so I just really love the fact that Talia Hibbert did not hold back, and you could tell that she was just having a lot of fun writing these two characters and writing the dialogue between them. And I also really loved Brad's character in particular. I thought that he was one of the sweetest male characters that I have read about in a long time, especially for a YA novel. Now obviously he had his moments where he was, you know, going back and forth with Celine, and he gagged her a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie, he gagged her a little bit a few times, but for the most part I thought Brad was so sweet and just so wholesome. And I just really love the fact that, like, we got to spend time with him in his head and got to see him when he was vulnerable and just feeling a little bit, you know, insecure about himself sometimes, especially when it came to his writing, because he has dreams of becoming a writer or like an author, I think. And so it was really just nice to be able to spend time with him and to really like get to relate to him on that level of sometimes feeling like you might not be good enough to do something, or sometimes feeling like you are an imposter, or whatever the case is. And so I just really like the fact that there were so many different like life lessons that you could learn from Brad when it came to his writing in particular, and also just trying to figure out life. I also really enjoyed the expedition and the camping scene that Brad and Celine had to partake in. Now I will say that I thought it was going to be a lot more dragged out, or I thought that it was going to be the main setting for the story, so that was something that I found a little bit odd that it wasn't. Either way, I still really enjoyed that part of the story, and I feel like that's where we got some of our most funny and iconic moments, was from those chapters in particular. Now we're going to move into the reason as to why this didn't become my favorite book by Talia Hibbert. Even though I enjoyed a lot of different elements, and even though I really did like Celine and Brad, I felt like the story was still a bit too young for me, which is odd. You guys know that I have advocated for YA books in the past, and I still agree with that sentiment. I still feel like no matter if a book is marketed towards YA readers or not, adults can still pick them up, period. So I still like to go out of my way to read YA books, especially Black YA books, and especially Black YA romance books, because I did not have that when I was growing up. And so the fact that I'm seeing those now in bookstores and online, I just want to buy them all and satisfy the inner child in me. So because of that, like I said, I do pick up Black YA romances quite a bit, or at least I try to. But this one in particular just felt a little bit too young for me. I don't know necessarily what it was about it, and I still can't put my finger on it exactly, but there were certain moments where I was just like, oh, this is a little bit much, or this is kind of getting on my nerves. And I had to really like take a step back and remind myself, like, hey, this is a YA book, they're in high school. I don't know, I just felt like I was doing it a little bit too much, especially compared to other YA books that I have read recently. I didn't feel myself getting taken out of the story because I realized like, oh yeah, this person is like 17 or 18. But this book, I just felt like there were a lot of instances where Celine in particular was just very immature, and it kind of got under my skin. And even though I liked her character, I will say that she kind of annoyed me the most out of her and Brad. I liked Brad a lot. Like, I have no notes on Brad, but I will say that Celine had her moments where I just kind of like got a little bit agitated with, or I kind of like cringed a little bit, because I'm like, girl, okay. But I actually watched Kenya from Lily Reeds's book club live show discussion on this book, and I was in the chat and I was talking to other people as well as listening to Kenya's thoughts, and they really put different things into perspective for me, in the sense of like why they really enjoyed this and why they felt as though it was such a profound YA novel. And after hearing their reasons, I understood a little bit better. I was like, okay, I got it, I hear y'all, I see where you guys are coming from. And so I feel like that discussion definitely helped change my perception on it a little bit better. And I'm still not 100% head over heels in love with this story, but I definitely do understand why people are, and why this resonated with so many readers, and I love that for y'all. But for me personally, I do just feel like this book did skew a little bit too young for me. That's all I'm saying. I still thought that it was an enjoyable read, and I definitely recommend it to anybody who is interested in picking up the book. And like I said, this cover is so stinking cute, so I might still get it anyway. I might go on Pango Books and get it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the mid-tier books. So think 4 and 4.5 stars. And so the first book that I want to talk about is actually a January read, and it is Take the Lead by Alexis Daria. So this is actually a book that I featured in my most anticipated romance books of 2023 video, but I read this in January and I really enjoyed this story, and Alexis Daria can do no wrong. I've said this multiple times, but like her books and her characters and her writing, chef's kiss. She just knows how to write good, steamy romances. So this story follows two characters named Gina and Stone. And so starting with Gina, Gina is a reality TV star. She is most notably known for her role on this like competitive dancing show. So think of Dancing with the Stars. That's essentially what Gina is on, but she is a professional dancer and she's been dancing her entire life and she's really looking for her big break. And so she's competed on this show for multiple seasons because she's trying to win the championship and she hasn't won it yet. And unfortunately, this is Gina's last shot in order to get the championship before she is kicked off of the show. And so Gina is panicking. She's trying to figure out how she's going to win this championship. And then that's when her love interest named Stone enters the picture. And so Stone is a rugged outdoorsman. He actually lives in Alaska with his family. And Stone is also a reality TV star before a different show. Him and his family have this outdoorsy nature type of show where they're pretty much living off of the land. But you can tell early on that Stone is not like the rest of his family and he doesn't really like being on this show. But he does it because it's a way for his family to have money in their pockets. Stone and Gina couldn't be any more different. Like I said, Stone is very outdoorsy and rugged, and Gina is a dancer slash a city living girl through and through. But throughout the story, you start to see that Gina and Stone get closer and closer to one another throughout this entire dancing competition, and one thing leads to another, and the story takes off from there. So like I said, I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I thought that this book was so charming, so sweet, so fun, and so sexy. Oh my goodness, this was such a steamy novel, and I haven't read an Alexis Daria book since I read A Lot Like Adios, which was like 2 years ago. I just forgot how good Alexis Daria is at writing smut. Like, this book was off the charts when it came to the chemistry, the tension between Gina and Stone. These two, yeah, you couldn't pull them apart, okay? And honestly, you didn't want to because they just had such great chemistry. This book is actually Alexis Daria's debut. So this book was picked up by a publisher and was traditionally published. I can't even imagine how steamy the independent version of this book is. Going back to Gina and Stone in particular, even though these two were from completely different worlds, they still worked somehow. They still made it work and it was still believable to me. I still bought into their romance and bought into them as characters. I was rooting for them every step of the way, especially Gina, because you could tell that my girl was snubbed. Every single season she was snubbed from getting that trophy, and I hate that. I hate when there's a clear winner but they're always getting snubbed, i.e. Beyonce Album of the Year, Grammys, Recording Academy. Yeah, so I always get my feelings when artists that clearly deserve big awards or just championship trophies, whatever the case is, don't get them for politics. This goes into my next point of Alexis Daria including commentary on just what it's like to be a woman, but also a woman of color in an industry that doesn't take you seriously, essentially. Because Gina is Latina, and she has talked about a lot of times with Stone that she can't do certain things that he does or that he thinks that she can do because she is a woman and because she is Latina. There were certain moments where Gina had to explain to Stone that there are a lot of stereotypes, of course, placed on Latina women in terms of being fiery and hot-blooded and just, you know, very over-sexualized, and the list goes on. I understood why Alexis Daria included that in there, and I still think it was important. And she always does that, to be honest. I noticed that she's did that in You Had Me at Hola and A Lot Like Adios. She is very big on including commentary on what the world is like for Latinas. And so I just really liked all of those little tidbits, of course, because you guys know that I love social commentary in my books, and I really enjoyed reading those little moments between Gina and Stone. And then moving on to Stone, I actually really liked his character too. I thought that he was an incredible book boyfriend towards the middle and the end of the book. It took him a minute to really get out of his shell and for him to warm up to Gina and this idea of dancing, because Stone is an outdoors guy. He doesn't dance, he doesn't do this type of stuff, but he needed to do this in order to, again, get money for his family. And so I just really loved seeing how his character went from being very reserved and very like dismissive to being very open, fun. You can really tell that Gina brought him out of his shell and made him feel more comfortable and at ease. And I just love when two characters are able to bring out the best in one another, or bring out a side in a character that no one else has been able to bring out. I just love the whole dancing part of this book too. I was a huge fan of the Step Up franchise as well as like the Bring It On franchise, and so whenever there are books or movies about dance or cheerleading, I'm seated and I'm ready to go. I really loved reading the different chapters where Gina was teaching Stone how to tango or how to salsa or how to do this move or this dance move, and I just really loved learning more about it. Now I will say that I do feel like some of the dialogue relating to the dancing was a little bit info dumpy at times, but I understand why it had to be. It was just certain moments where I was like, we probably could have cut down on that just a little bit. But other than that, I really enjoyed this book, and I can't say enough great things about Alexis Daria. If you haven't read any of her books yet, what are you waiting for? I have no idea, but you need to tap in. Like the Primas of Power series, You Had Me at Hola and A Lot Like Adios, those are incredible. And she's actually coming out with a third book in that companion series. I do think that this is a great book to start out with if you haven't read her books yet, because this is a standalone novel, I'm pretty sure. So definitely make sure you check this out if you haven't. The next book that I have here that is sitting at a 4.5 star is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This is a book that I actually talked about in my February TBR video, and I actually read it in the month of February. Everybody clap, thank goodness. This is one book that I actually did get to, and I'm so happy that I did, because this has easily become one of my newest obsessions. I really enjoyed this book, and Caleb Azuma Nelson is officially stamped in my book. I've only read this one by him, but I am so excited to pick up more books by him, because this was just an absolutely beautiful novel. This story follows two Black creatives in London, and so one of them is a dancer and the other one is a photographer, and they become fast friends, but that friendship slowly starts to morph into a romantic relationship. But there are circumstances beyond these characters' control that is preventing them from being together, and the story takes off from there. I don't want to say anything else because this book is very short, as you can see, and I think this is one of those that you should just pick up and give it a read. But as you can see here, I tabbed this book up because there were so many different quotes and lines and phrases that just spoke to my soul, and I owe Caleb Azuma Nelson everything, because this has some of the most beautiful writing that I have ever read in my life. I still think that the writing is pretty accessible, but I will just say that like there are a lot of flowery words and just descriptive writing incorporated throughout this story. That's part of the reason why I love this so much, because even though it might not resonate with everybody, if it hits for you, it hits for you, and that is the best feeling, when you feel like you can resonate with an author's writing to a T. So I'm not going to really get into all of the quotes and phrases that I tabbed or annotated in here, because we will be here all day, but just know that this has some of the best quotes that I have ever come across. Another thing that I really loved about this story was just how tender and sweet and caring and nurturing it was. Even though there are external factors and extenuating circumstances involving these two characters and really like preventing them from being fully together, I still love the moments that we got when they were together, because they were just some of the most sweetest and tenderest moments that I read in a book. I just feel like the writing in here really helped drive that point of how this book is so tender home. And I know I keep using that word, but like that's the best way that I can describe this book. And you could tell that they were trying their hardest to hold on to their relationship and hold on to their love by any means necessary. It really makes you realize that marginalized groups, but specifically Black people, have to deal with a lot of noise on the outside, and unfortunately sometimes that noise does seep into the inside and can put strains on your relationships with people, and that was very evident here. Caleb Azuma Nelson does an incredible job at exploring Black personhood, racism, what it means to be a Black person in a world that is just so cruel to you at certain points, and the list goes on. And so I'm not surprised that I enjoyed the story as much as I did, just because of the topics that were explored in here, but also because of the romantic and emotional aspect of this story. Now, I don't know how people felt about the ending of this book. I haven't really looked up that many Goodreads reviews on this, especially about the ending, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty realistic. Okay, so we're finally moving on to my highest rated books of the month. So both of these books right here are sitting at a 5 star, and I loved both of these in different ways. And so the first book that I'm actually going to talk about is a book that I'm still having a hard time articulating my thoughts and feelings on, and so I am going to actually read my Bookstagram review for this, because I feel like that just encapsulates the way that I'm feeling, and I feel like that's the best we're gonna get. So the first book that I have here and that I'm referring to is Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. So I told you guys in my February TBR video that I was going to read this one in February, and that I had a feeling that I was really going to enjoy this story and give it a high rating, and that's exactly what happened. I love being able to know what books I'm going to enjoy and which books I'm not going to enjoy. I feel like I have a good read on that, because this one, it exceeded my expectations and more. So this story follows a young Black girl named Kiara who lives in Oakland, California with her brother Marcus, and her and Marcus are living on their own. Their mother, I think, is deceased, and I'm pretty sure their father is deceased, but Kiara and Marcus are on their own, and they're trying their hardest to just get by. They are going through a lot of different financial hardships, and there are a lot of instances where Kiara and Marcus are threatened with evictions and just other really messed up things. So they're really going through it financially, and Marcus is an aspiring rapper, so that's really where he's dedicating a lot of his time to. He's not really helping out around the house or helping out Kiara because he is so focused on becoming a rapper, whereas Kiara realizes that like they need money now and they need to figure out ways to still be able to live in their apartment. And so Kiara really doesn't have any job prospects because she unfortunately had to drop out of high school, so she doesn't even have her high school diploma or really a completed education, and so her job prospects are really slim to none. And so Kiara ends up turning to sex work, and you pretty much just follow her throughout the story of her going through the trials and tribulations of night crawling, and then the story starts to spiral from there because Kiara ends up getting involved in this really wild and messed up police investigation, and the story takes off from there. So as you can hear from that synopsis, this is a very triggering and loaded book, so please make sure you look up trigger warnings before you just dive into this one. This is not for the faint of heart. Kiara goes through some of the most horrific and unimaginable things that I think a human being can go through, especially a young girl, and my heart broke for her 10 times over. I have never felt this invested and just so torn up and broken up over a character, over a fictional character. There are so many different fictional characters that I have obviously come to invest in and tell you guys about, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, they were so compelling and da 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 da. But Kiara in particular just felt so real and so authentic, and I'm still having a hard time articulating my full thoughts on this book, you guys. It is just so loaded. There are just so many different topics within this book that can be dissected and analyzed and talked about, and I love the fact that Leila Mottley created this book. This definitely, I feel like, sparked and will spark so many conversations that need to be had. So like I said, I am just going to read my Bookstagram review for this. Whoa. Talk about a devastating, heart-wrenching, and infuriating story. I finished this book about a week ago, and I still can't find the right words to articulate all of my thoughts. I don't think I ever will, to be honest. However, Night Crawling is one of the most important and urgent novels I've ever read. There have been a lot of stories that moved me, but this one right here, yeah. I knew early on that Mottley had a story to tell, and damn, did she tell it. Our female MC, Kiara, has become a character that I hold near and dear to my heart. The atmosphere that Mottley created, and her ability to make you feel as though you're actually in the story right alongside Kiara, even during her most darkest points, is brilliant. There were a few moments when there was hope, and like Kiara, I was hungry for her to get it and hold on to it. And when she experienced horrific and unimaginable things, I actually felt her pain and turmoil, which is wild. I genuinely felt as though she was real, and in many ways she is. Not only is this inspired by true events, but Kiara represents so many Black women and girls forced into and subjected to this life, which breaks my heart all over again, 10 times over. Even though I can't get into all of my thoughts on Marcus, Trevor, and Ale, I will say that Kiara and Trevor's bond was beautiful. I hated how their bond was created, of course, but the actual bond itself was so compelling. Final thoughts. Overall, I 1000% recommend. This book has altered my brain chemistry and has impacted me in ways I still can't explain. I enjoyed the commentary on Black girl and womanhood, poverty, exploitation, the adultification of Black girls, and the list goes on. Mottley is an author that I will for sure keep on my radar, and I can't wait to read more of her work in the future. I feel like that's the best that we're all going to get when it comes to my thoughts on this book. Just make sure you look up triggers because this is really raw, gritty, and Leila Mottley does not hold back on the horrific things that Kiara goes through. I don't want to spend too much more time on this because like I said, I feel like my review said everything that I needed to say, but I definitely recommend giving this book a try if you haven't already or if you're on the fence about it. I just think that this is too much of an important novel to not read. And the last book that I have here that is also sitting at a 5-star is The Rebel King by Kennedy Ryan. So this is actually the second book in the All Kingsmen duology. The first book is called The Kingmaker, and I read that book back in January. I'm not going to get into the synopsis for this book because this book actually picks up right where we left off in book 1, but I will give you guys my thoughts on the actual characters and just how certain things played out in this story, because this one is definitely my favorite out of the two. Even though I enjoyed The Kingmaker and I gave that a 5 out of 5 stars, and I still stand by that rating, I still have no notes on that book, this one right here, yeah, this is it. This is the magnum opus of the duology, which makes sense because obviously when it comes to a duology, the second book is always going to have the most action and the most meat compared to the first book, since that one is more so for world building. Regardless, this book, incredible, phenomenal, show-stopping. I can't get enough of this book, and I have not stopped thinking about Lennox and Maxim since I finished this story. Like I said in my January wrap-up, Lennox and Maxim have gone down as one of my favorite fictional couples of all time. To be honest, y'all, they're actually up there with Blair and Chuck from Gossip Girl for me. Whoa, whoa. I know you guys are probably looking at me like,
girl, really, Blair and Chuck?
Like, yeah, really, Blair and Chuck. You guys know, if you've been following my channel for a while, I love Gossip Girl. That's my favorite TV show of all time. OGGG. But Blair and Chuck are one of my favorite fictional couples. I know they're toxic. I know they're a mess. I know they probably really shouldn't even be together, but I don't care. there. I'm a chair stand through and through. Every single time I rewatch Gossip Girl, I rewatch it mostly for Blair and Chuck, because that's really what I'm here for. That is what I'm seated for. These two in particular reminded me of how I feel about Blair and Chuck. Not saying that Lennox and Maxim are toxic, because they're not at all. These two are not toxic in the slightest, but there's just certain couples that I feel like we have seen throughout media that are just mythic. I said this before in my January wrap up. Similar to Blair and Chuck, there were so many moments between Lennox and Maxim, and I was just like, wow, I can feel their spark. Like, you just know that these two are meant to be together, and there's nothing that can rip them apart unless it's like death. But other than that, there's nothing that can rip these two apart or keep them apart from one another for very long. And I just feel like those type of couples always get me. I just thought that these two were soulmates, twin flames, and you couldn't tell them otherwise. These two were truly the perfect match for one another. When it came to their careers and just how ambitious and goal-oriented they were, there was no stopping them. These two were on a mission to do good in the world and to also make change. And to read about them in book one and knowing that they started out very young, to then reading about where they ended up at in this book, like in terms of their career, oh my goodness. And to see how Kennedy Ryan fleshed them out was just something that was otherworldly. You guys know that I go up for Kennedy Ryan in pretty much every single one of my videos. Like, I am obsessed with this woman's storytelling and her writing. And to be honest, if I was to ever write a book, I won't. So don't ask in the comments, please, y'all. I will never write a book because I have no interest in that. I just like to read books. I don't want to write them. If I was to ever write a book, I would want to write one like Kennedy Ryan. I would want to be a student in the school of Kennedy Ryan, okay? I just don't think anybody does it like her, especially when it comes to emotional, epic, romantic stories. I don't really see it for these other authors out here. I don't. Like, she gives you so much depth with every story and every character. It doesn't matter what the plot is or what the characters have going on. You're always going to get a great story from Kennedy Ryan's books. And I just appreciate that, because consistency is key. Every book that I've read of hers so far has been a 5-star. That's wild. I don't think I have any other authors besides Beverly Jenkins. I don't really think I have any other authors where I can say confidently that most, if not all, of their books have been 5-star reads for me. But Miss Ryan, I can say that. I can say that. And because of that, she's the doll. She's that girl. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what else to tell y'all. But this book right here, absolutely incredible. I definitely recommend the All Kingsman duology, but I really recommend this book in particular. Lennox and Maxim had my heart, okay? And I wanted more of them, to be honest, after I read this and after I read the bonus epilogue, because Kennedy Ryan has a tendency to always include a bonus epilogue when it comes to her stories. And when I read the bonus epilogue for this, I actually choked up because it was just so sweet and just such a nice full circle moment for these two characters. They went through hell and back again. And for them to end off the way that they did, it moved me. It really did. Just make sure you guys tap in if you haven't already, but I definitely recommend the All Kingsman duology for sure. Kennedy Ryan actually just came out with new covers of this book. So if you're not feeling the covers of these books, she does have new ones that are out, and I think they have like flower motifs on them, and I definitely think that they're very pretty, but I actually like these covers a lot better, to be honest. And that's saying a lot. I don't usually really go for books that have like people on the cover, like in this regard, but I actually think that this works so well. I love the black and white and the gold. I just think that this looks so sleek and chic. So I'm gonna keep these editions for sure, especially because I annotated the Rebel King. Just make sure y'all pick up this duology because it is so fucking good. Like, this ate so bad, especially the Rebel King. Like, I'm still gagged over everything that happened in here. And to be honest, this was so cinematic. I just felt like this could have been a movie or a limited drama series on Hulu or Netflix or something, because there were some things that popped off in here and made this into a suspenseful like thriller in certain regards, and I was here for it. So if Kennedy Ryan ever makes this into a limited drama series, your girl will be seated. All right, y'all, and those are all of the books that I read for the month of February, with a few January reads sprinkled in. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me and my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.